good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. As Maria said, I'm Paul, and today I'm going to talk you through what I term Oracle's approach to cloud security. Now, this isn't going to be a deep dive, feature function, sort of like cloud security service session. I'm not going to be talking about every single service we do and how it works and benefits them all. This session is more looking about how we think about security. So I think one of the uniquenesses of Oracle and OCI is we think about security a little bit differently to maybe some of the other cloud providers that you're used to. So today's session is very much about taking you through that approach. Now, just to introduce myself a little bit more, I'm Paul, been in Oracle for about 17 years, been in cloud security, or been in security generally for about 25 years. And as Maria said, I'm joined by my more than able colleague Fabrizio, who's going to be manning the keyboard while I'm talking. So if you do have any questions, fire them over into the Q&A. Now, just having a quick look at the poll results. Really interesting. I see that most people on the poll sit between about a number 2 and a number 4 in terms of knowledge. So hopefully there'll be something within here that you'll find useful. At the end, once I've been through the Oracle's approach, I'm going to give you a little bit of a tantalizing view, if you haven't seen them, in some of the announcements that came out from Oracle Cloud World last week around the security area. So just before we get going, I thought it was fair to bring up the safe harbor statement. Most of the stuff that I'll be talking about, where I do mention products and services, are generally available. Today, you can log into the console. You can use most of the services that I'm talking about. However, because I'm mentioning announcements from Cloud World, there will be some areas where that capability has not yet been released. I'll try and make that really clear on the slide. I'll try and mention that at the time. But please just bear that in mind that some of the stuff I am talking about does stray into the category of futures. Okay, so let's set the scene a little bit. Where are we today in terms of security market? Some of these things sound quite strange because we've been talking about some of these things for a long time. Let's start with ransomware. We know that ransomware is a big challenge at the moment, and data breaches generally are a big challenge. And we've seen that they've been a big challenge for a long time, but that's not slowing down. I mean, I'm based in the UK, although I cover EMEA, and I quite often listen to the National Cybersecurity Centre CEO talking. And one of the things she says is that ransomware is the #1 threat to UK businesses at the moment. And that's certainly the case in other countries across EMEA, if not across the globe. We see it as a massive problem, and it's not going away. Global shortages. I mean, Ponemon, this is a study from 2021 from IDC, but certainly Ponemon have been talking about cybersecurity challenges in terms of skill shortages since about 2016 that I can remember. And that number's always been about the same. It's always been around the 4 million mark. So we don't have enough people to keep up with the cybersecurity challenges that we have. And we know that people are the weakest link, whether that's by mistake, by misconfiguration, by lack of education. We know that people are the weak link in security. If you look at the sorts of challenges that are keeping CISOs awake at night, it's the sort of stuff down the right-hand side. I've always said, and I'm not the only one that's always said this, that complexity is the enemy of security, and that has never changed. We need to make security easier. COVID introduced a very big challenge around hybrid working, pretty much overnight, and security people had to step up to that challenge very quickly. Compliance never gets easier. It only ever gets more stringent. And that's something that organizations have to constantly battle with. And then we've got artificial intelligence. You start to think about the use of AI, both within services that you buy, as well as within your own organization's use of artificial intelligence. And you've got to start thinking about the security implications around that. So these are the sorts of, I suppose, the big ticket items that I'm hearing and I'm seeing out there when I'm talking to CISOs, when I'm talking to heads of IT, when I'm going to conferences and listening to other people talk. This is the sorts of challenges that I'm hearing. So how does Oracle approach that? Well, I like to think of it in terms of 4 S's. And we're going to go through each of these in a little bit of detail. But let's quickly introduce them now. So simplify is really trying to address that challenge that I talked about on the previous slide about complexity. The fact that security is just too hard. As I said before, I've been in the space a lot of years, so I see the challenges around complexity. The second one is around strategizing. and really making sure that you're focusing on what's important. You can put all the controls in place you want, but if you're not protecting the right thing, then it's a challenge. So we're going to talk about strategizing. Then we think about number 3, which is standardization. And this is looking at what security capabilities we can use across the world that we're living in today. And when I say that, I mean multi-cloud, I mean hybrid cloud. It's not a case that you just see your workloads in one cloud and you're done. That's just not the reality where most organizations are today. And then we look at number 4, strengthen, which is really around cyber resilience. I think this is an area that a lot of organizations are waking up to, but I don't necessarily think everybody's got a plan in place for dealing with this yet. So we're going to cover it again. With all of these, I've only got a short period of time. I'm going to cover this fairly quickly. Obviously, we can have follow-up sessions to dive down into greater detail. So let's start off and look at number 1, simplify. As I said, security is too hard. So when we think about security in OCI, and this is something we've thought hard about from day one of designing and building OCI, is how do we make security easier? And the way we do that is by making sure that any tooling that we build around security isn't complex. We don't want you to have to be a cybersecurity expert to be secure and to be using the tools that deliver security capability for you. We want to try and make sure that your day-to-day job around security is easier. So can we reduce your basic mundane security challenges like patching, for example? Can we, as Oracle, take on more responsibility in some of these areas? We can't necessarily own the responsibility, but can we take on more of that responsibility for you? Or can we provide simple tooling that will help you meet this? It's around automation. Can we help reduce human errors by trying to do more in the automated world with security? And then finally, it's all about not just the security tools and capabilities that we provide, but it's about how we build OCI. Can we give you that very strong underpinning? Can we give you that strong baseline security, both in terms of your tenancy and when you spin resources up, but also in terms of actually under the covers and what we do within Oracle? So let me give you a couple of examples of what I mean. And if you've heard me talk or heard anybody else from Oracle talk about OCI and security before, you've probably seen this slide. But just in case you haven't, it's worth reiterating it. If you look at the way that most sort of first generation cloud providers, the first people out the post, if you like, built their cloud environments, the hyperscalers, they built it on a VM type platform. Nothing wrong with that. They build servers, they stick a hypervisor on top of it, they stick some guest OSs on top of that. We were concerned about that approach because we thought, well, that gives a lot of trust to the hypervisor. You're placing a lot of trust in that big black box in the middle. And we're not a big fan of trust when it comes to security. And we thought, how can we lower the level of trust we place on that hypervisor and the role that that hypervisor provides? And how we can provide a very clear delineation between the control plane where Oracle software is running and Oracle's controlling the environment versus the data plane where your data is running, effectively the green boxes at the top. So we did that by stripping the networking out of the hypervisor. It no longer has responsibility for networking. And that block box you see at the bottom now is a completely separate physical layer. It's a physical piece of hardware. And the job of that network isolation layer is to control the flow of networking traffic in and out of that server. Let's say provide that clear delineation between the control plane and the data plane. And the idea behind that is it's pretty much making lateral movement impossible. Because even if you break out that guest VM and you take over the hypervisor, you can't start crafting dodgy network packets to start to perform lateral movement attacks and use it as a bridgehead to get to other servers, because you can't control the network and it would just get blocked to the network virtualization layer. Now, one of the things that's interesting about this approach is this is a key design tenet of OCI. So what does that mean? It means it's not something we thought about afterwards and thought, oh, that'd be a good idea to do. It's something that we thought about from day one. And therefore, this isolated network virtualization layer sits in every server, in every data center, in every region across the globe. And there are a number of other benefits to this network virtualization. For example, performance. The hypervisor runs quicker because it's doing less. It's a great benefit. It also means because of the way that we've delivered this network virtualization, when you want a bare metal server from OCI, we can deliver a true bare metal server. That server has got no Oracle software running on it whatsoever. It's completely under your control. So there's a whole bunch of benefits for delivering this, not least this complete separation between the control plane and the data plane. And I could go on and I could give you example after example of how we built OCI in a more secure underpinning, if you like, and some of the technology and capabilities that we've built under the covers that you don't even see within the console. But isolated network virtualization is a great example of that. Now, we all know that the cloud is a shared responsibility model from a security perspective. I'm sure you've seen versions of this diagram in many presentations and in many white papers and in many books. But I think where this takes the conversation for me is around patching, because it's a headache. It's a headache for all IT organizations, and that has never changed. And especially in the world now where we're short of cyber skilled people, we need to start thinking about, okay, is there a better way we can do patching? So if I look at how we do that within OCI, we're working hard to take on greater responsibility, as I said before. Now, one of the ways we can do that is with patching. So if you look at our autonomous database and our autonomous Linux offerings, then the idea behind both of those is they take away the need for you to focus on the mundane and allow you to focus on actually your workloads. So if we look at autonomous database, it does some really cool stuff like automatic scaling and automatic tuning and automatic provisioning. That's great, but from a security perspective, if you look at those middle two options, then it does encryption automatically. Well, actually, if you're not that familiar with OCI, we do that anyway across the board. Encryption at rest and in transit is turned on by default everywhere. But we do that within the autonomous database. We automatically turn on at-rest encryption. We automatically turn on in-transit encryption. In fact, you can't turn it off. But also, what's really interesting is we do automatic patching and updating. We apply those patches and those updates for you. And we do it with zero downtime because of the way that we use technologies like Oracle Caseflies on Linux, for example. So no longer do you have to worry about patching and updating your autonomous database or your autonomous Linux. So the benefits of that, obviously, we're taking away human labor. We're meaning you're not needing to focus on those mundane. You can focus on the far more interesting and important parts of the job. It also gets rid of human error. We apply those patches as soon as we can. You don't have to wait months to get it into a patching cycle. And as I mentioned, we do it with zero downtime. Now, as I said before, I've been in the security space a long time. I've worked with a lot of security products, and complexity always sits at the heart of a lot of the problems, I think, with security. So if I think of a lot of the security tools that I've used over the years, generally security is expensive. We know that. They tend to be very hard to use. I mean, I've been on lots of training courses over the years, and they just don't make security tools easy to use, or certainly haven't done in the past. And also, security tools tend to be very isolated. They tend to be very fragmented. So they don't always work together with other security tools. They can end up leading into silos. Because they're expensive, organizations might not deploy them across the board. A program might deploy a specific security tool for that program. Then a different program comes along and deploys a different security tool, and the two don't necessarily talk together. I've seen it. I've seen it lots. I've deployed it lots. It's just the way of the reality of security tooling that we've had in the past. We also need to recognize this very interesting stat from Gartner, and that says that by 2025, 99%, so pretty much all breaches, will be something that was preventable because it was a mistake or a misconfiguration by end users. And I think that's really telling. It's saying that security is hard and security needs to get easier. So if I think about and talk about some of the things that we're doing within OCI from a security service point of view. So these are the things that we provide to you within your tenancy for you to build and utilize within your deployments. Now, I'm not going to go through this diagram in detail. You can see it's a fairly standard network diagram. You've got some cloud networks that have got subnets, private subnets, public subnets, and you've got a myriad of different security services that we have within OCI within that diagram. So you can see some of the things you're probably familiar with. You've got web application firewall, you've got fully managed Bastion hosts, you've got auditing and monitoring, you've got identity and access management, you've got vulnerability scanning, some of the things that aren't on the diagram. You've got things like security lists that sit between the subnets, network security groups, those sorts of things. You've also got things like Vault, which I'll talk about in a bit. But there's a couple of services that I really want to talk about briefly because I think it really pushes home this message around simplification and around automation, and that's CloudGuard and security zones. So CloudGuard, if you're not familiar with it, is a cloud security posture management capability. Now, the job of CloudGuard is to watch your tenancy and look for problems that would weaken your security posture. Let me give you a couple of examples. You might create an object storage bucket, you might make it public. That weakens your security posture. You might spin up a VM and you might put it in a public subnet and give it a public IP address. Well, that weakens your security posture. There might be valid reasons for doing both of those, but as a general rule of thumb, it's weakening your security posture. CloudGuard will look for those problems using out-the-box rules that we provide for you. And it will, in most cases, give you the option to automatically remediate the problem. So if it does see an object storage bucket that's public, if you want it to, it'll make it private again automatically. If you spin up a compute instance and give it a public IP address, if you want it to, it can shut down the compute instance. It can take off the public IP address. It can terminate the instance. There's different things that you can do as a result of that. So that's CloudGuard watching your tenancy and fixing weaknesses that get introduced as a result of configuration or activity change. Security zones is really CloudGuard on fire, because the idea of security zones is that you take your most sensitive resources, so your production database, your backups sat within object storage, those sorts of things, and you put them in a security zone. And what security zone is, it takes that list of rules from CloudGuard and it enforces them. It doesn't just watch for problems and fix them, it enforces those rules. So in a security zone, you cannot create an object storage bucket and make it public. It just won't let you. It will generate you an error. You cannot create a public subnet because the idea is that you shouldn't have any public-facing, internet-facing resources in your security zone. So therefore, you can't create a VM and give it a public IP address. It just will not let you do that. So not only are we trying to simplify security by automating it, we're giving you a set of rules out the box using CloudGuard and security zones. So again, we're trying to simplify it. We're not expecting you to do it yourself. A lot of these capabilities that you can see on that diagram feed into CloudGuard as a central console. So if vulnerability scanning finds something, it will feed that problem into CloudGuard. Just as a very simple example, if somebody creates a Bastion session, it will feed that information into CloudGuard. So we're providing integrated security. We're providing prescriptive security because we're giving you the rules, and we're trying to make security simple by automating it for you. Now, I talked about security being expensive. We don't ever really within OCI want security to be a trade-off between can I afford it for my project? So one of the things you'll notice within OCI, and from the diagram on the right-hand side, the majority of the security services that we provide within OCI, where we can, we provide for zero additional cost, where you've got a paid subscription. And so a lot of these security services that I've already talked about, CloudGuard, security zones, vulnerability scanning, bastions, I talked about encryption earlier, shielded instances, confidential computing. I'm not going to go through the entire diagram, but you can see that the majority are provided at no additional cost. In some cases, if you want to extend the capability beyond core OCI security, maybe you want to integrate it with some third-party capabilities, or you want to use some of the advanced capabilities of a service, then there may be a supplementary cost for that. But generally, where we can, we provide the services for free. Why? Because we want you to use them. We want you to be as secure as possible. And I say, we don't ever want you to be in a situation where you can't afford security. So let's look at number 2. Let's look at strategizing. And this is where I talked about making sure that you're focusing on what's important. As it says there, data should be an asset. We don't ever want data to be a liability. So we need to make sure that it's the right data that we're protecting. Now, you'll know Oracle's heritage. We come from a database company. Database is still a major capability for us. One of the things that we're very good at over the 40+ years that we've been a business is managing and securing data. And if you think about it, that's what the attacker wants. They want your data. So making sure you're protecting the data and protecting the right data is crucially important. So you can really think about this in 3 ways. The first one is governance around that around that data. The second is around minimizing where that data sits, so therefore minimizing the attack surface. And then with all good security, it's about auditing, making sure you can see what's going on and making sure you have a history and a log and a track of what's happened previously. So how can we help do that within OCI? Well, we have a capability called DataSafe. And DataSafe is a cloud-native capability built in OCI. And it does exactly what we've just been talking about. It allows you to place governance, security governance around your data. You can run a security assessment. The security assessment will look at your Oracle database and it will tell you what the configuration looks like. It will tell you any weaknesses. Are you forgetting to turn on some security tools? Do you have some very powerful roles? Do you have some users assigned to powerful roles, maybe directly or indirectly? These are the sorts of things that security assessment will tell you. You can baseline that assessment and look for configuration changes. We can run user assessments, so we can look at risky users based on static data, like what roles they're in, and based on dynamic data, like when they're last logged in. And then what's very important that DataSafe can do is sensitive data discovery. As I said, there's no point putting a padlock on the gate if you're locking the wrong gate. So sensitive data discovery will tell you where your sensitive data is, and it will tell you how much sensitive data you've got. So you can really start to focus your security controls on protecting the most sensitive data that you have. We talked about minimizing the attack surface as number 2. Within DataSafe, there's data masking. Data masking will take your production data and it will desensitize it so you can use it safely in a non-production environment, therefore minimizing your attack surface so your production data only sits in the production environment. And then DataSafe does activity auditing. You can bring in your audit data from your Oracle databases and you can stick it in DataSafe. Get it away from the database, get it away from where it might try and be compromised by a malicious actor. Get it into DataSafe where you can then start to report on it. Now, just like all the other capabilities, if you're using DataSafe within Oracle Cloud against the Oracle Cloud database, then there's no additional charge for using DataSafe. If you want to extend DataSafe out to maybe an Oracle database sat in a different cloud or sat on premises, then there's a normal charge for doing that. So we talk about number 3. Number 3 is looking around standardizing. And this is recognizing that, as I say, the reality of today's world is you will have multiple clouds. You will also have on-premise. So your workloads don't just sit in one cloud. So how do we work in a world where we have multi-cloud and we have hybrid cloud working? So if we think about the different sort of deployment options that you're probably going to have, you'll have your data within some Oracle Public Cloud. We've got 40 plus regions, 41 plus regions, can't remember the current number. But if you think about that, you can deploy your resources in any of those regions. If you create a tenancy, I can literally subscribe to any of those regions and deploy resources in any of them. We have a number of dedicated cloud offerings within OCI. So you can take Oracle Cloud and you can put it in your data center as dedicated cloud. We've launched, and I'll talk about this a bit later, we've launched our sovereign cloud. So we have specialized clouds like our UK and US government clouds. We have our sovereign cloud. So these are still full clouds, but they're not our commercial cloud. So you might have your data spread across those. As I said before, you might still have some of your data, will likely have some of your data on premises as well. So you've got a hybrid cloud model. And then you've got, dare I say it, a multi-cloud model. Yeah, believe it or not, some people actually use other clouds as well. So you'll have your workload there. And if you think about the sorts of capabilities that we can utilize across all of those clouds, I think they sort of fall into 3 areas. You've got identity and access management, you've got application security, and you've got data security. So from an OCI perspective, then we can utilize security services within OCI to deliver those capabilities across all of those different locations. OCI's Identity and Access Management service is an enterprise class IAM capability. Yes, it will protect access to OCI, but you can use it to control access to your resources wherever they sit. It doesn't matter. From an application security perspective, you've got Oracle Web Application Firewall. If you've got an internet-facing web application, it doesn't matter where it sits. You can use Oracle WAF to protect access to the application. And as I've already mentioned, from a data security point of view, you've got DataSafe. DataSafe can deliver the security capabilities I talked about previously to your Oracle databases wherever they sit, on-premise, in OCI, in any other cloud. It doesn't matter. But we also recognize that we don't play in every security space. There's just areas where Oracle doesn't have a capability because it's not an area that we choose to play in. So for that, we rely heavily on partners. Sometimes we will utilize those partners within the OCI infrastructure itself. So for example, the OCI network firewall that we announced back end of last year now, our next generation firewall is utilizing Palo Alto's next gen firewall technology. If you're using our vulnerability scanning service, if you've already got Qualys and you're already utilizing Qualys for vulnerability scanning, using our vulnerability scanning service, you can deploy the Qualys agent out the box using our vulnerability scanning service. So where it makes sense to help you with an enterprise security capability, we will partner and we will deliver security services through those partners directly from within OCI. But we also have a very strong OCI marketplace. So we have partners who are deploying their security services into the OCI marketplace. And from there, you can deploy them straight into your tenancy. In many cases, you can even use your existing license and bring that with you to OCI to pay for those services if you don't want to pay for them through your OCI subscription. So we're working hard to deliver a comprehensive security capability either through OCI security services that we build, OCI security services that we deliver through partners, or through the OCI marketplace. And then finally, looking at number 4, looking at cyber resilience. Now, it's a massively important topic. I could spend hours talking about cyber resilience. Unfortunately, I don't have hours. So it's going to be a very quick sheep dip talking about cyber resilience. And it's recognizing the importance, especially in today's world of things like ransomware, it's recognizing the importance of cyber resilience and having that recovery plan in place. Now, I could talk about HA and DR and recovery from a whole different bunch of angles. I could bring up the ransomware attack sort of cycle, and I could look at the different capabilities that we could deliver at the different stages within an attack to really try and help you minimize the need to recover. But we cover that quite often. I think for this, I just wanted to focus really on recovery. And again, if I think back to number 2, and I think back to strategizing and focusing on where your data is that's important, usually that sits in the database. So let's focus on the database. So we've got our primary site, we've got our production databases sat there, and that's been operated by the DBAs on a day-to-day basis. We can utilize services like the Zero Data Loss Autonomous Recovery Service, or ZELDA for short, that will do continuous backups and verification of backups from your main database. It will take those, you can just keep those in your primary site. Or as you can see in the diagram here, we can back those off to a bunker site, effectively an air-gapped cyber bunker, where even if I manage to take down the primary site or manage to attack the primary database, I'm getting nowhere near the bunker site because it's offline. It's air-gapped. As you can see there, the firewall is opened at randomized times to transfer the backup from one of the recovery services to the other. Because of the way that zero data loss recovery works, it can recover your data far quicker than a standard backup. And you can recover to an exact point in time. So the point in time where you know that maybe the ransomware hit, or maybe you got breached, you can take it back to exactly that place. And you can manage all these with the same tooling. You can utilize things like data save. You can utilize things like Enterprise Manager to manage this different tooling. So it really does give you a strong capability to be able to get your core sensitive data, your production data, back to a known good state very quickly and with a verified capability. So that covers the 4 S's. I appreciate it was a very quick whistle-stop tour, but hopefully that gives you an idea about how we do at least think about security and how we approach security, because it is massively important. It's not just a case of let's throw 50 tools across the fence and say, okay, here you go, here's 50 tools, because you're not going to use them or you're not going to use them properly. So we focus on, as I said before, providing a set of simplified tooling, providing a set of integrated tools that work together, and trying to be more prescriptive with security so that you don't have to be a cybersecurity expert, but at the same time giving you the flexibility. So if you are a cybersecurity expert, then you have the flexibility to make changes where it makes sense to make changes. Now, we can't talk about security without talking about compliance. And the compliance program within OCI is something I'm massively proud of. If you think about sort of compliance, it really falls into two buckets. You've got the thing that Oracle is responsible for and our obligations versus your obligations. So we've got a compliance program that's got around, I don't know, 80 plus, I think, certifications at the moment. And they tend to fall into two brackets. You've got global certifications like SOC 1, 2, and 3, like ISO, as you can see there. And then you've got certifications that tend to be either regionally specific, governmental specific, or industry specific. So you can see there that some of those regulations are relevant to America, like FedRAMP. Some are relevant to like Japan, for example. And for those, it doesn't make sense to apply those globally across the board because FedRAMP is very US specific. So we have FedRAMP high certification within our US government cloud, where it makes sense to have it. So with many of these certifications, where they're not global ones, we'll have them where it makes sense to have them, either for that particular region, for that government, or for that industry. But there's also certifications that it doesn't make sense for Oracle to achieve by itself, because in many cases, it's based on the data and how you utilize the data and the workload that you're running as a customer on the cloud. So as you've already seen, we provide a whole bunch of security services that will help you to meet the regulations or work towards compliance with the regulations that are relevant to you as an organization. But we go further than that. Where we can, we'll provide advisories, whether they are technical briefs, whether they're white papers, whether they're advisories. We'll give you guidance on how you can utilize those security services to meet or to work towards compliance with that regulation. So GDPR is a great example. It doesn't make sense for Oracle to be GDPR certified as a cloud because it's based on how you process the information and how you store and how you utilize the information and the PII data that you're holding. So what we do is we provide an advisory that says, okay, here's all the security services within OCI. Here's the various parts of regulation for GDPR. If you utilize these security services, then it will help you work towards meeting those requirements of GDPR. And you can see we do that for a whole bunch of different regulations, PCI, etc., etc. Now, we've got some customer testimonials. I've got no intentions of reading through these now. On each of these, when you get the slides later, you can click the read more. It will take you to a video, success story, whatever it is, and you can read about this in more detail. But you can see just terms up there like cutting costs, simplifying HIPAA compliance, lowering costs, boosting agility. These are all benefits that customers are seeing as a result of the way that we approach security within OCI. Now, I did promise at the outset that I wouldn't leave you without giving you some CloudWheel teasers. So before we go into the Q&A, I thought it was worth giving you a quick summary of some of the key announcements. This isn't covering everything, but this is covering some of the key announcements. So I mentioned this before, we have the EU Sovereign Cloud. We launched that last month. And this is designed for organizations that have data sovereignty requirements in EU or data residency requirements within EU. And it's a cloud that offers the same services as all of the other clouds, as in all of the other regions within OCI, all our commercial regions. It's the same set of OCI services at the same price, but it's physically and logically separate to the rest of OCI. And it's managed in a very specific way that meets the EU data privacy and digital sovereignty requirements that many of our customers have. If that's something that you have a need for, then I encourage you to have a look at that. It's up and running, it's live, you can utilize it today. We announced Oracle Zero Trust Packet Routing Platform, which is really interesting. I talk a lot about Zero Trust. You may have noticed on the previous compliance slide, I mentioned a Zero Trust white paper. Well, I'm the co-author of that white paper. So I've written quite a bit about OCI and about Zero Trust. And this is really taking Zero Trust to the next level. It's looking at intent-based security policy that's enforced at the network layer. The idea behind that is it's classifying data and it's preventing data from being accessed in ways that it shouldn't be accessed. I thought rather than talk about this, let me show you a very quick viewlet or a quick video that just shows you an example of Zero Trust Packet Routing Platform in action.
We're starting from a support agent portal where I should not have access to personally identifiable information, or PII. But as you can see, I do. We need to fix this. To secure this data today, I would configure authentication, authorization, firewalls, security lists, data encryption, and a lot more. Oracle believes there is a better way. Humans should be able to describe security intent. Security should be enforced at the network layer, and the network should only allow authenticated and authorized communications. This is what Zero Trust Packet Routing Platform, ZPR or Zipper, delivers. Let's take a closer look. Using the OCI console, let's create a Zipper policy to prevent unauthorized users and networks from accessing customer PII. Let's try to write policies that humans can understand easily using generative AI to help us get the syntax correct. Zipper distributes the policy throughout your network. Zipper enforces security intent of the policy at the network layer using attributes that contain strong assertions about the identity of the sender, receiver, and type of data. Meanwhile, it continuously watches system changes to ensure enforcement is in place. Let's go ahead and apply it. Flipping back to our application, now I can't see PII. That's good. Let's take a look at what is happening on the back end using our visualizer. This is a powerful tool to visualize data security posture, understand data flows, and confirm that my intent was enforced. When I attempted to access the customer PII, an alert fired that there was a violation to the data security policy, and the request was blocked at the network layer. This was just a simplified data security, but it's only the tip of the iceberg.
So, what else came out of Cloud World? I talked a little bit about encryption and our aim towards ubiquitous encryption within OCI. Now, in an effort to continue to make security simple, as we've talked about throughout this presentation, by default, with encryption, it's Oracle managed. We will manage the keys for you. You don't need to worry about it. If you create an object storage bucket, it will be encrypted and we will manage the keys. However, we've given you options for a long time for managing your own keys through what we call virtual vault, virtual private vault. But we wanted to extend that. So we've announced at Cloud World dedicated KMS and external KMS. And I'm going to focus on external KMS because that's actually out now. It got released last week. An external KMS allows you to implement hold your own keys within OCI. It allows you to deploy a hardware security module on-premise, so out of Oracle Cloud, generate your key material within there, and integrate it directly with OCI Vault. So all services that currently today support OCI Vault, so Oracle Database, object storage, file storage, block volumes, boot volumes, etc., all of those that today support OCI Vault from a customer managed keys will seamlessly work with the external KMS. Meaning that if you've got a regulatory need, for example, to maintain your keys off the cloud and maintain your keys on premise, then you can now do that with external KMS. As of today, it supports Talis CipherTrust Manager, and other HSMs will be supported in the future. We also announced Access Governance, which is, again, a cloud-native capability designed to address your access governance needs. So it does things like certification, it does provisioning, it does synchronization, but it's backed up by machine learning. And again, this is really to try and help you simplify security and not spend hours going through spreadsheets or clicking loads of different options. The idea is you can do this very quickly using, let's say, ML-assisted capabilities so that you can get through your certifications very quickly, whether they're scheduled, whether they're event-based, etc. I've talked about CloudGuard, and we're really extending the capabilities of CloudGuard. We've got 3 new capabilities. One's a log insight detector, which allows you to take the logs from OCI and build your own queries against those rather than just using the out-of-the-box rules that we provide. You can combine those with the out-of-the-box rules that we provide. On top of that, we've introduced integrated workload protection, which utilizes the MITRE ATT&CK framework. Again, we give you a whole bunch of out-of-the-box recipes, but this is really looking at your instances, for example. So it's not just looking at your cloud configuration like CloudGuard was before. This is now delving into your instances and allowing you to build custom queries around those instances. And then we've got Kubernetes container governance. So again, we're providing out-of-the-box rules and recipes to help you secure and govern your Kubernetes containers. As you might expect, it works with Oracle's Kubernetes engine within OCI, which is OKE. But it allows you now to integrate not just compute instances, but containers into your CloudGuard. So what we're really doing with CloudGuard, if you look at where it came from as a cloud security posture management tool, we've introduced integration with our threat detection and threat intelligence platform. We've improved the way that security zones now works and integrates with CloudGuard. And on top of these three new capabilities, we're now very much moving from a cloud security posture management capability to a cloud native application platform protection capability, or a CNAPP service. And that's really what CloudGuard is delivering today. Again, just like our customer case studies, the analysts like the approach that we're taking from a security perspective. You can read more about those in your own time afterwards. So as I wrap up, and before I hand back to Maria for the Q&A, I wanted to leave you with some useful resources. So firstly, we have the CIS landing zone. If you're fairly new to OCI, then the CIS landing zone is hosted on GitHub, and it's a set of Terraform scripts, very flexible, but builds a good baseline security infrastructure within your tenancy for you. It creates a set of segregated admin groups. It creates a good network deployment. It turns on some of the security services. I definitely recommend you have a look at that. Couple that with our architecture center, where you can look at the reference architectures, the solution blueprints for different standard deployments. I mentioned that I was the co-author of our OCI Zero Trust Security white paper. It would be remiss of me not to promote that a little bit, so that's what the second link is for. And then if you're already using if you're already using OCI today, I would absolutely, if you're not using them already, encourage you to look at CloudGuard, get it turned on, get it monitoring your environment. Even if you don't do the automatic remediation, see what sorts of problems it's finding. If you've got an Oracle database, wherever you're using it, have a look at DataSave. Again, even if you only use it for the security assessment to understand the security of your database, then absolutely fire it up. Very simple, very quick to configure, and very easy to use. And then we also provide on GitHub a security health check. This is a set of scripts that you can run yourself that will evaluate your security posture, and it'll give you recommendations for things that it finds. So hopefully those are practical tools that you can utilize and you can take advantage of.